Have you ever stopped to properly look at the coins in your pocket? It's easy to think of them as just little bits of metal we use to buy a cup of tea or a newspaper, but they are so much more than that. Each one is a tiny time capsule, a miniature piece of history you can hold in your hand. These coins have been on a remarkable journey, passed from monarch to merchant, from soldier to shopkeeper for thousands of years. They tell us stories of power, politics, war and peace. They reveal who was in charge, what they valued, and how the very idea of Britain was forged. One metal disc at a time. It's a story that's absolutely dripping with drama, and I find it utterly fascinating. Think about it. The face on a coin isn't just a picture, it's a declaration of authority. When a new king or queen came to the throne, one of their first acts was often to mint new coins bearing their own image. This was a powerful way of saying, I am in charge now. It was the social media of its day, a way to get your face and your message out to every corner of the kingdom. The designs, the metals used, even the weight and size of the coins, all these details tell a part of Britain's grand, sprawling narrative. Following the story of our coins is like taking a walk through history, with kings, queens and revolutionaries as our guides. This journey begins long before the Romans ever set foot on British soil and continues right up to the brand new coins of King Charles III. We will travel back to a time of Celtic chieftains and their strange, abstract coins that looked more like modern art than money. We will see how the mighty Roman Empire brought order and its own currency, stamping its authority across the land. Then, as the Romans left, a new chapter began with the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings, each leaving their own distinct mark on the money of the realm. It's a tale of invasion, settlement, and the slow creation of a nation we would recognize today. So, let's embark on this adventure together. We'll uncover how a Saxon king created a coin so influential it shaped English money for centuries. We'll see how the Normans, Tudors and Stuarts used coinage to cement their power and project their magnificence. We'll witness the birth of Great Britain through its money, follow its journey through the industrial might of the Victorian era, the turmoil of 2 world wars and the revolutionary change to decimal money that many of us can still remember. This isn't just the history of currency, it's the history of Britain itself, told through the humble and yet extraordinary coin. Our story starts over 2,000 years ago, in the Iron Age. Before the Romans arrived, the Celtic tribes of Britain had already started using coins. But these weren't like the coins we use today. They were often made of gold or a silver alloy, and didn't have the heads of rulers on them. Instead, they were decorated with wonderful abstract designs. You might see stylized horses, boars or swirling patterns. These first British coins, known as staters, were inspired by coins from Europe, but were given a uniquely British twist. They were probably not used for everyday shopping, but for big, important transactions between powerful chieftains, a bit like a status symbol to show off wealth and influence. Then in AD 43, everything changed. The Romans arrived and they brought their own highly organized system of money with them. Roman Britain was suddenly flooded with coins like the gold aureus and the silver denarius, all bearing the powerful, realistic portrait of the emperor in Rome. This was a complete revolution. For the first time, people in Britain were using a standardized currency that was valid across a vast empire. Roman coins were used for everything, from paying soldiers and civil servants to buying goods in the new towns or civitates that sprang up across the province. It was a powerful tool of control and a constant reminder of who was in charge. The Romans established mints in Britain, including one in London, then called Londinium, to produce coins locally. This was a massive operation, a key part of the imperial machine. The coins they made were not just for trade, they were instruments of propaganda. The back of the coins, the reverse, often featured images celebrating Roman victories, gods and goddesses, or symbols of peace and prosperity brought by Roman rule. When you spent a Roman coin, you were holding a piece of official state messaging in your hand. This idea of using coins to send a message is something that will be copied by British rulers for centuries to come. But the Roman Empire couldn't last forever. By the early 5th century, the legions were withdrawn from Britain to defend other parts of the empire, and the supply of new Roman coins dried up. An economic fog descended. People likely resorted to barter or continued to use the old worn Roman coins that were still in circulation for as long as they could. This period, sometimes called the Dark Ages, saw a decline in the use of coinage. It marked the end of one era and the uncertain beginning of another, as new powers and new peoples began to shape the future of the island and its money. After the Romans left, Britain splintered into several smaller Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. For a while, the use of coins almost disappeared. But as these kingdoms grew more powerful and started trading again, the need for money returned. Around the year 600, small gold coins called thrimsas appeared, soon followed by the most important coin of the era, the silver penny. These early pennies, known as ciatas, were small and thick, featuring a mix of strange, wonderful designs. Some copying old Roman styles, others showing animals or mysterious faces. It was a period of artistic experimentation before things became more standardized. The big moment in Anglo-Saxon coinage came in the late 8th century, thanks to a powerful ruler named Offa, King of Mercia. He introduced a new, broader and thinner silver penny that was of a consistently high quality. Crucially, it carried his name and title, and often a portrait of him, a clear statement of his authority. Offa's penny set the standard for English coinage for the next 500 years. The basic model of a silver penny with the monarch's head on one side and a cross on the other became the blueprint. In fact, the penny remained the main and often only coin in circulation for centuries. It's a remarkable legacy. Just as the Anglo-Saxons were getting their act together, a new force arrived, the Vikings. These raiders and settlers brought their own customs and, eventually, their own coins. In the parts of England they controlled, known as the Danelaw, they started minting their own pennies. Some of these coins copied English designs, but others were fascinatingly different. They might feature Viking symbols, like Thor's hammer or a sword. Sometimes they even combined Christian symbols with their own, showing how the two cultures were beginning to merge. These coins are a fantastic historical source, showing us the Viking presence not just as warriors, but as rulers and traders. Then came another seismic event, the Norman conquest of 1066. When William the Conqueror seized the English throne, he understood the power of the existing coinage system. He didn't scrap it, he took it over. The English silver penny was one of the best currencies in Europe, and William kept it that way. He made sure the quality of the silver remained high and that the mints across the country were under his firm control. The design, however, changed to show his own face, looking straight at you, a powerful and direct image of the new Norman rule. This act of continuity, combined with a clear message of new ownership, was a masterstroke of political management. Throughout the medieval period, the silver penny remained the king of coins. It was the workhorse of the English economy, used by everyone from lords to peasants. However, there was a practical problem. If you needed to pay for something that cost less than a penny, what did you do? The solution was simple but brutal. You cut the coin in half or even into quarters. The cross design on the back of many pennies was a handy guide for doing this, creating halfpennies and farthings or fourthings. It wasn't a perfect system, as you could get shortchanged with a poorly cut piece, but it was the only way to make small change for hundreds of years. A major reform came under King Edward I towards the end of the 13th century. He was a king who liked order and efficiency, and he turned his attention to the coinage. He introduced the very first round halfpennies and farthings, meaning people no longer had to chop up their pennies. This was a huge step forward for everyday commerce. He also introduced a new, larger silver coin called the groat, which was worth 4 pennies. Although the groat didn't become truly popular for another 50 years, it was the start of a move towards a more complex and useful system, with different denominations of coins, making larger transactions much easier. Edward I also standardized the design of the coins. The portrait of the king became more lifelike, and the information on the coin became clearer. usually stating the king's name and the location of the mint where the coin was made. This was partly to combat a serious problem of the time clipping. Dishonest people would shave tiny slivers of silver off the edge of coins before passing them on. Over time, the coins would become smaller and smaller, devaluing the currency. Edward I introduced new designs with a border of dots around the edge, making it immediately obvious if a coin had been clipped. It was a clever piece of anti-fraud technology. As we move into the later medieval period, the portraits of the kings on the coins become even more grand and realistic. Think of the coins of Henry V, the hero of Agincourt, or the magnificent gold coins introduced by Edward III, like the Noble. These were not just pieces of money, they were works of art designed to project an image of royal power and national pride. The gold noble, for example, famously showed the king standing in a ship, holding a sword and shield. It was a potent symbol of England's growing naval strength and confidence on the European stage. These coins were England's calling card, showcasing its wealth and might. The Tudor period, beginning with Henry VII in 1485, brought a new level of artistry and symbolism to British coins. Henry introduced two magnificent new coins that were all about showcasing the majesty of his new dynasty. The first was a stunning gold coin called the Sovereign, the largest and most impressive gold coin yet seen in England. It showed the king enthroned in full coronation regalia. He also introduced the first shilling, a silver coin worth 12 pennies, which featured a remarkably realistic portrait of the king. This was a move away from the stylized portraits of the past towards true-to-life depictions, a trend that his son, Henry VIII, would continue with gusto. Henry VIII's reign is famous for many things, but in the world of coins, he is remembered for the great debasement. To fund his lavish lifestyle and expensive wars, Henry started mixing cheaper metals like copper with the gold and silver used for coins, while keeping their face value the same. People quickly noticed the coins were of poor quality. Silver coins would wear down, revealing the copper underneath, especially on the nose of Henry's portrait, earning him the nickname Old Copper Nose. This caused massive inflation and a loss of public trust in the currency. It was a financial mess that took his children, Edward VI and Elizabeth I, years to clean up. Queen Elizabeth I made it her mission to restore the quality of English money. She oversaw a major project to recall all the debased coins and issue new ones made of fine silver and gold. This restored public confidence and stabilized the economy. Her coins are famous for their beautiful and iconic portraits, showing her as a powerful and timeless virgin queen. Then in 1603, a huge change happened. Elizabeth I died without children, and her cousin James VI of Scotland became King James I of England. For the first time, the crowns of England and Scotland were united. This was reflected in the coins, which now bore new titles like King of Great Britain and featured the combined arms of both kingdoms. The Stuart period was one of dramatic conflict, especially the English Civil War. This turmoil was directly reflected in the coinage. King Charles I, needing money to pay his armies, set up emergency mints in places like Oxford and Shrewsbury. These siege pieces were often crudely made from silver plate and other objects donated by his supporters. Meanwhile, Parliament issued its own coins, pointedly without the king's portrait. After the execution of the king, the new Commonwealth of England issued stark, simple coins with no portrait at all, just shields and inscriptions in English rather than Latin. It was a radical statement, using coins to declare that the monarchy was over. After the drama of the Civil War and the restoration of the monarchy with Charles II, Britain's coinage entered a new, more modern era. A huge technological leap forward came with the introduction of milled or machine-made coins in 1662. Up until then, coins had been made by hand, hammered between two dies, which often resulted in irregular shapes and weak strikes. The new machines, installed at the Royal Mint in the Tower of London, produced perfectly round coins with detailed designs and lettering on the edge. This made them much harder to clip or counterfeit, and gave the currency a sophisticated, modern look befitting a growing commercial power. It was during Charles II's reign that a famous new coin appeared, the guinea. First minted in 1663, it was made from gold brought from the Guinea coast of West Africa, which is how it got its name. It was intended to be worth £1 or 20 shillings, but the value of gold fluctuated. For much of its life, the guinea was actually worth 21 shillings. It became the coin of the wealthy, the aristocrat's coin, used for professional fees, land deals, and horse racing. To be paid in guineas was a sign of status. The guinea became a cornerstone of the British monetary system for the next 150 years. Another iconic figure made her debut on coins in this period, Britannia. The image of a female figure representing Britain had roots in Roman times, but she was revived under Charles II and placed on the reverse of the new copper halfpennies and farthings in 1672. She was shown seated with a shield and a spear, a symbol of maritime power and national identity. It's said the model for the first Britannia was the King's favourite mistress, Frances Stuart. Britannia has remained a recurring feature on British coins ever since, a powerful and enduring symbol of the nation, adapting her look through the centuries but always representing the spirit of Britain. By the 18th century, Britain was a global trading powerhouse, and London was the world's financial centre. A reliable currency was essential. After years of the values of gold and silver fluctuating, Britain made a landmark decision. In 1816, following the Napoleonic Wars, the country formally adopted the gold standard. This meant that the value of the pound was fixed to a specific amount of gold. The guinea was replaced by a new gold coin, the sovereign, worth exactly 20 shillings or £1. This act created a stable and trusted currency that underpinned Britain's economic dominance throughout the 19th century and the height of its empire. The long reign of Queen Victoria, from 1837 to 1901, was a period of incredible change, and this was mirrored in the nation's coins. As the British Empire expanded across the globe, British coins travelled with it, becoming a symbol of imperial power and economic might. The gold sovereign, with its classic design of St. George slaying the dragon, became one of the most trusted and recognised coins in the entire world. Mints were even opened in Australia, Canada, India and South Africa to produce sovereigns that were identical to those made in London, ensuring a standard currency for trade across the vast empire. Queen Victoria's image on her coins tells a story in itself. She was the first British monarch to be shown aging on her coinage. We see her first as a young girl, depicted in the young head portrait from 1838. Decades later, this was replaced by the Jubilee head in 1887, showing her as a mature queen wearing a small, almost comical crown. Finally, the old head or veiled head portrait was introduced in 1893, showing her as a solemn, veiled widow, the matriarch of the empire. This progression was a powerful way of connecting the public with their long-reigning monarch, showing her journey through life alongside that of the nation. The Victorian era also saw the introduction of new coins to meet the demands of a booming industrial economy. The florin, a silver coin worth 2 shillings or 1/10 of a pound, was introduced in 1849. This was an early and ultimately failed experiment with decimalisation. The first design was controversial because it omitted the words Dei Gratia, meaning by the grace of God, earning it the name the Godless Florin. It was quickly replaced. Smaller bronze coins, pennies, halfpennies and farthings were also introduced in 1860 to replace the heavy, cumbersome copper ones. These lighter coins were much more practical for the everyday transactions of the working population. One of the most charming stories from this period is that of the farthing. This tiny bronze coin, worth a quarter of an old penny, was a staple of Victorian life, allowing even the poorest children to buy a sweet or a small toy. To make it more distinctive, the farthing featured a wren on its reverse from 1937 onwards, one of Britain's smallest birds for its smallest coin. Another interesting fact is that the Royal Mint, after more than 500 years at the Tower of London, moved to a new, purpose-built factory on Tower Hill in 1810. This new steam-powered mint was a symbol of the Industrial Revolution, capable of producing millions of high-quality coins for Britain and its empire. The 20th century brought immense challenges and the nation's coinage had to adapt. During the First World War, the government asked people to hand in their gold sovereigns to help fund the war effort. Gold coins disappeared from circulation, replaced by paper treasury notes for £1 and 10 shillings. Britain effectively came off the gold standard, and the golden age of the sovereign as a circulating coin came to an end. The metal content of silver coins was also reduced in 1920 from 92.5% silver or sterling silver to just 50%, another measure to save money after the huge cost of the war. The years that followed saw further changes. King Edward VIII reigned for less than a year in 1936 and abdicated before any coins bearing his portrait were officially issued for circulation in the United Kingdom. However, a small number of pattern coins were made. Famously, he broke with a centuries-old tradition that said successive monarchs must face in the opposite direction to their predecessor. He insisted his portrait face left, the same as his father, supposedly because he preferred that side of his face. His brother, George VI, restored the tradition by also facing left, implying that Edward VIII would have faced right had he been on the coins. After the Second World War, Britain was once again facing huge debts. In 1947, the government took another drastic step. It removed silver from circulating coins altogether. From then on, silver coins like the shilling and florin were made from a copper-nickel alloy known as cupronickel. This was the end of a very long history of silver coinage in Britain. The post-war period also saw the introduction of a new 12-sided threepenny bit made of brass. This distinctive coin was introduced in 1937 and became very popular, as its unusual shape made it easy to identify by touch, a useful feature during the blackout. The biggest change of all came on the 15th of February 1971, a day known as Decimal Day. Britain finally abandoned its ancient and complicated system of pounds, shillings and pence, where there were 12 pennies in a shilling and 20 shillings in a pound. It was replaced by the simple decimal system we use today, with 100 new pence in the pound. This was a massive undertaking, requiring a huge public information campaign. New coins, the halfpenny, 1 penny, 2 pence, 5 pence and 10 pence, were introduced to replace the old pennies and shillings. It was a revolutionary moment that changed the way everyone in Britain thought about and used money. The reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the longest in British history, saw more changes to coinage than any other. After decimalisation, the coin lineup continued to evolve. The small, chunky 20-pence coin was introduced in 1982 to fill a gap between the 10 pence and 50 pence. A year later, in 1983, the pound note was replaced by the now familiar round pound coin, which was thicker and heavier to give it a sense of value. Over the years, the 5 pence, 10 pence and 50 pence coins were all made smaller and lighter to reduce production costs and make them more convenient. Each change marked a subtle shift in the nation's economic landscape. A wonderful innovation came in 2008 when the Royal Mint launched a new set of definitive coin designs. The reverses of the 1 pence, 2 pence, 5 pence, 10 pence, 20 pence and 50 pence coins each showed a small section of the Royal Shield of Arms. When placed together like a jigsaw puzzle, they formed the complete shield. The pound coin featured the full shield design. It was a clever and beautiful concept that celebrated the unity of the United Kingdom. In 2017, the round pound coin was replaced by a new, highly secure 12-sided version designed to be the most secure circulating coin in the world, combating the rise of sophisticated counterfeits. The 21st century brought new themes to our commemorative coins. The 50 pence and £2 coins in particular have become canvases for celebrating British culture and history. We've had coins marking the London 2012 Olympics, the works of Shakespeare and Beatrix Potter, and major scientific discoveries. The decision to leave the European Union, Brexit, was marked with a 50 pence coin bearing the inscription "Peace, Prosperity and Friendship with All Nations." These coins act as miniature public monuments, capturing moments of national significance and reflecting what we as a nation choose to remember and celebrate. They are conversation starters in our pockets. In 2022, the nation marked the end of an era with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and the accession of King Charles III. Swiftly, the Royal Mint began producing new coins featuring the King's portrait. Following the tradition that dates back to the Stuarts, his effigy faces left, the opposite direction to his mother. The first coins bearing his image entered circulation in late 2022, marking a historic moment of transition. From the abstract patterns of Celtic chieftains to the modern secure coins of today, the story of British coinage is a direct reflection of the story of Britain itself, a tale of continuity, change and identity, stamped in metal for all to see.